What up, what up, what up, bitches? Welcome back to Lockdown Universe, home of the bizarre, peculiar, and unheard of stories of UFO, legend, and paranormal lore. Welcome back, welcome back. Happy to be back. Hopefully you're doing well and taking care of yourselves. Now, we're going to talk about the Miami Mall incident, but not like everybody else. I have a new proposal and theory for you, and I think it warrants some conversation. So, everybody by now has heard of the Miami Mall incident that happened on January 1st into January 2nd. Okay, we know people saw 3 10-foot tall black aliens that looked like they were coming out of a portal, right? And they looked like they were coming in and out of our dimension, and they freaked everybody out and everybody ran. The cover story, theoretically, is that there were some teens fighting, and then that made 100 cop cars show up, right? Crazy, right? Doesn't seem like a normal response. But anyway, so this is the story. So here's my theory. Okay, now that I've done a lot of research into the story of the UFO congressional hearing, when we listen to the words that David Grush uses, and Representative Luna states that we need to listen carefully to the words he's saying interdimensional. Isn't that interesting that he said that back in July, right? Talking about, end of July. And now, very first day in 2024, we have apparently interdimensional beings popping up in Miami. Now, there's lots of theories about how they got there, why they got there. There's even people who say if you put in the coordinates backwards, west, south, northeast, that you end up in Antarctica, and that's where they really meant to go, because that's where aliens go, is they have their base down in Antarctica, and that's where they're supposed to be. Whatever the situation, whatever you want to believe, that's fine. But what I think is interesting is the timeline. Okay, think about this for a second. Okay, here's the timeline. Here's the timeline we have. We have July was the UFO congressional hearing. Grush states interdimensional. He says, don't think of it as putting it into a box. I want you to have an open mind. We can't put everything into just a small topic. It has to be larger. It is possibly interdimensional. When they went to Grush's house in December, for the penthouse briefings, we call it, where anybody could just purchase a ticket and just go hang out in Grush's penthouse and listen to him speak for a few hours, people stated that it was interdimensional. He was always talking about it being interdimensional and that people were being threatened with their lives. Okay, great. Now we're getting somewhere. Now we're having two different events happening. We have the UFO congressional hearing happening, and then we have Grush's penthouse happening, where he's giving out more information in an unclassified setting. Then we have January 1st, January 2nd Miami Mall event, in which we see 3 interdimensional aliens. This is the timeline, right? We're talking about July, December, then January, boom, interdimensional aliens popping up. Now, then we have a SCIF, a secret compartmentalized information facility where they can go and talk about specialized information without it being heard by any other press or anybody else. In that SCIF, which happened January 12th, guess what happened? More information was given. Representative Luna came out and she stated people are being threatened, people are being killed. People listen to the words David Grush has used in multiple instances. He's talked about interdimensional beings. What did we see 11 days earlier? That's exactly what we saw in Miami. That's exactly what many people saw in Miami. Then we have the cover-up. Then we have the cops making fun of people when they call in asking serious, investigative questions. Then we have we're moving on into the end of January now, where we're having more congressional hearings being created, hopefully more laws now, and so on and so forth. So this stuff all happened within the span of 6 months, guys. This wasn't even a year. This is a 6-month span, not even, almost 5 months. Okay, so I want you to really think about this timeline, because it really opens up our eyes to what's being revealed, right? A lot of people hypothesize that the forces that be, the powers that be, have to tell us what's going to happen before it happens. people say that, the Simpsons predict things, and that Matt Groening is a time traveler, and that he's revealing things to us as he's able to. The government has to tell us about things that happen. Hollywood has to tell us about things that are going to happen before they happen. So I think it's really interesting to just look at this timeline and say, wow, Grush really said interdimensional back then. He said it again in December. Then January 1st hits. We see the interdimensional aliens, but they cover it up. Meanwhile, in the congressional hearings, they're talking all about it, but they can't speak to specifics. So it's almost as if, they didn't release the specifics, but we saw the specifics at the mall. Interestingly enough, now here is the next piece of that puzzle. One of the channelers, one of the amazing channelers off Gaia, Elizabeth, she goes by two first names, like Elizabeth Aaron or something like that. She states that she channeled the Galactic Federation, and they said that their beings, they're a lot of the aliens that are part of the Galactic Federation, which is comprised of like 200 different species. We can call it the Galactic Federation, whatever you want to call it. Has 200 different species, and some of those species like to see Earthlings and are curious about Earthlings in their environments. And where do they typically see them interacting? But at a mall or at an event. That's why we have these alien encounters that supposedly happen at these events. Like if you're going back to the Travis Scott concert, where people said they saw like dark entities, and there was, a bunch of people that got killed there, and people felt like they were in hell, and there was like a lot of negative energy and stuff like that. And then there's these events where at the mall people were scared out of their minds. So these entities, as reported by Elizabeth, stated that they want to see humans. They're curious about humans and our interactions with each other. And so she stated that they actually were at the mall. They were just watching humans go about their daily lives, grabbing a cup of coffee, having a conversation with friends and family, shopping, and so on and so forth. And that's kind of what happened. And and for some reason or another, they lost their ability to hide themselves. And so that's why it looked like they were glitching. She stated that all these beings are on different vibrational levels. Yes, we might all be physical, but a lot of people that understand physics know that everything is vibrating at a different frequency. Humans are vibrating at a different frequency than the table. The table's also vibrating, but you just can't see it. So if that's true, then plenty of other aliens could be on different frequency wavelengths, be actual physical beings, just vibrating at a different level, which is really fascinating. When you think about, we think about it biblically, or you think about it, in an interdimensional kind of fascination. When you think about angels or demons or something like that, maybe that's why people can actually be, injured by a spirit, or healed or helped by a spirit, because they are actually, able to come into our, what do you want to call it, dimension for a time and interact with us. Much like a Bluetooth signal can interact with us. You listen to your music through the Bluetooth signal that's being shot out from your stereo. You can play guitar and have a cordless cable transmitter be plugged into the output, and you don't have to have a cable anymore. But yet it works. It transmits. It affects things in our reality. So that I found really fascinating, and it's kind of like mind-blowing, because if you really push it to the alien aspect, you can kind of understand why the government's kind of been like, well, do we want to really release this information? Are people going to be able to handle it? Well, they released it in July, and people did not riot in the streets, did they? They didn't. So we have this really interesting kind of 6 months where there's just been a shit ton of stuff dropped on us, and it keeps going and going and going. What else will this year hold? Will this be the year where We get some real information. We kind of got the general information in July. They basically said yes, they exist, and there's different representatives, different witnesses that came forward and said, hey, this is the real deal. So now that that's happened, and now they're grabbing more witnesses and they're going to come forward with it, it makes you wonder what's next on the timeline. Have you ever seen that meme where it has, like, I think it's Robert Duvall, and he's standing in front of the whiteboard or the chalkboard, and he's like, well, I didn't have flying butterflies or, killer butterflies on for 2024. It's kind of like that, where we're kind of playing this guessing game of what's coming next. Okay, so we have this revelation in July. Aliens exist, they're here. We're going to try to get more information. We've gone down to Eglin Air Force Base. We tried to grab information. They stonewalled us there. Then in December, Grush has his penthouse party, gives out more unclassified information. Then in January, we have the Miami Mall incident, and then we have the skiff briefing and the representatives coming out saying, hey, we got more information. Can't really discuss everything, but it's just more confirmation that aliens are here, aliens exist, and we're going to continue to push, according to Burchett and Paulina. So what's next on the timeline if we kind of look forward here? Okay, we have the fact that they said they exist. Then we have the fact that they said they're interdimensional. Then we had interdimensional beings actually show up. You have to wonder, okay, even though we had that channeler Elizabeth from Gaia talk about the fact that she channeled it and that it was like intentional or whatever, but not to hurt anyone. Could it have been somewhat intentional for the government to reveal a little bit, right? Let's play devil's advocate for a second. Let's say it's Project Bluebeam, or part of Project Bluebeam, where they start having these aliens pop up in malls, these huge entities popping up outside of JCPenney or Kohl's or something like that, Nordstrom or Rack or something like that, right? Hanging out in Barnes and Noble reading a book, and they just start popping up everywhere, and then what happens if they pretend to try to go grab somebody? Now it's an invasion, right? Now they're attacking people, and now the government's got Project Bluebeam in all its glory, right? Its full revelation that they can make us believe that the aliens are actually coming here to attack us, and that we have to get behind the government in order to create a one world government, in order to get behind them and say, hoorah, let's go get the aliens. We're behind you, government, even though you've been lying to us for 80 years. Sounds like a bunch of shit to me, doesn't it to you? So I'm kind of under the notion that while they can do Project Bluebeam, they could do that easily, right? I still feel that there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of real aliens out there with crash ships that really are out there, and and it's more of disseminating what, or deciding what the hell is real versus what is the government trying to tell us. And as they get more pressure put on them, they're gonna have more pressure to convince you of their narrative, right? Because they don't want, even if we give them full amnesty, they're going to still be worried about coming out and given the full revelations of their information. Grush has already been threatened a bunch of times. He said he was afraid for his life in the congressional hearing, if you listen to the whole thing. And he said he knows personally people who have been hurt or killed. Holy shit, man. This dude's got balls of steel coming out talking about this stuff. So where does it go from here? Do we get more whistleblowers? I think so. Tim Burchett already said he has another whistleblower list ready to come forward. He's not going to give the witness list because they got to those witnesses ahead of time and made them stop, made them not come out. So we're going to see more congressional hearings, more information that we can grab, even if it's generalized, that we can grab and use to extrapolate and say, hey, they said this, that means X, Y, and Z. They said this, that means X, Y, and Z, ABC. So we'll be able to kind of dissect more dialogue as it comes along with these new congressional hearings. And I'm excited because I'm hoping that by this July, that we'll have another big congressional hearing, or they'll have another skiff that they can talk about more information with. So it took from July to January to get a skiff that they could have a conversation about. I think they had two, because Tim Burchett stated he wasn't invited to the first one, which is a shame because he's the one that's been pushing this shit so hard. They almost didn't want him to be there, right? Because they didn't invite him. So, and I know Luna went to the penthouse party because she was able to grab unclassified information, bring it forward, and talk about the fact that Grush said that they were interdimensional multiple times. So I think the next step is that we'll grab more information as it comes out. I think we're going to have more whistleblowers, whether they wait to do a congressional hearing or they just come out like on News Nation, like Grush did, right? He saved his ass, didn't he? He came out and did the News Nation interview before the congressional hearing because he didn't want to get taken out. But now all the information was already out on News Nation. So if they took him out, guess what? Now it looks like they did it. Now it looks like they're guilty. Now it looks like they got something to hide. Now it looks like Grush is the real deal, whereas they can deny it now, for the time being, any of these dark government agencies. But they've got people in the DIA, the Department of Defense Intelligence Agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency. CIA, I don't really trust anymore, but the DIA, man, them guys are deep. I would believe those guys. Now, the thing to keep in mind, too, right, is that they can have fake news agents out there, disinformation news agents out there. And we know that there are some. Richard Doty stated that was part of his job, was to put out a little bit of disinformation. But I think that we're going to get more real information than disinformation, especially in the next coming UFO congressional hearings. It's amazing to me that, Stephen Greer, for his UFO Disclosure Project briefings and press conferences, is able to get at least 6, sometimes 10 witnesses up there, but the people that go before Congress, they're really terrified. And they could only get 3 out of, I think, 6 that they had, 6 to 10 that they really had on the docket. So I think Congress is going to reload. They're going to get more witnesses. They're going to reload, get ready, really, really bring this out, ask the people to provide more detailed information. The only thing with the detail is that, like with Grush in July, there's certain details that they can't give out because it's still classified or it's still a threat to national security. So they can't give it out legally. He even said in the congressional hearing, he's like, there's certain things I have to do so that I don't go to jail. So he had to write a discrepancy report, present it to the Investigator General of the Intelligence Committee, and then that allowed him to be a whistleblower and allowed him to say certain things, but not everything. So I think that we have to keep our hopes up and our expectations moderated in the fact that we're not going to receive, maybe a detailed information about a craft necessarily. Maybe we'll get something like Ryan Graves said, a 300-foot, wide football field size craft coming out of the Pacific, but from certain individuals, we're not going to get that because it's against their, NDAs and stuff that they signed. So we're going to see how much information we're able to get. But look at the timeline. Look at that Miami thing. Do you think that the Miami Mall invasion was Project Bluebeam, run by the government, because they see this stuff coming? They knew that they're getting more pressure put on, and that more UFO congressional hearings are coming out, so there's more pressure for them to push their narrative fast? Or do you think that this was, according to Elizabeth Aaron, I think is her name, the channeler, who had a couple episodes on Gaia, who stated that she channeled the Intergalactic Federation, and they said that it was intentional, and that there's species that are just curious about humans and what we do and how we go about our daily lives and what our purposes are, so they can learn more about us. And that it was not anything aggressive or anything like that. It was just of interest, and they didn't mean to freak everybody out. Well, that's for you to decide. It's for me to present, for you to decide. I think it's interesting. I think it's fascinating. I got Spaceman behind me. He's in the superhero pose with the arm down to the ground. I've got Cardinal Man behind me. Got some I got a very cubist painting back here of some dogs. My brother-in-law did, and the alien painting my daughter did. So very fascinating stuff. Very, very fun stuff for me to present with you. So I hope you guys are having a fantastic night, taking care of yourself spiritually, physically, emotionally. All of them are important to your overall health. I hope you guys follow through on your hobbies and your goals and your dreams. Take care of yourselves. Do what makes you happy. Find happiness in every day, whatever you have to do. And as always, continue to question the universe around you. Until next time, guys, take care of yourselves. Lockdown Universe out. Peace.